The three chemicals that make every food taste natural. The pen hovers over the NDA while a progress bar crawls across a monitor. Natural strawberry V12-3 loading. The chemist signs without looking up. On the bench, 3 tiny vials, clear, pale yellow, almost nothing. He whispers, "This is in your yogurt, your seltzer, your granola bar." The lab door seals with a hiss. Those 3 vials, sweet, savory, and green, sit inside almost everything labeled natural. They're legal, profitable, and familiar on your tongue. To understand why that strawberry tastes the same from airport kiosk to corner store, we need to go back to the moment taste left the farm and moved into a lab. The birth of manufactured taste. Paris, 1874. A perfumer heating beechwood turns smoke into crystals, vanillin, separating a single note from the chorus of a vanilla bean. That moment doesn't just change perfume, it rewires food. If you can isolate comfort, you can bottle it, you can ship it, you can sell it. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, railroads knit the country together and factories learn to can, cure, and pasteurize. Food stops being local and starts being logistics. Shelf life extends, flavor doesn't. Cabbage keeps, brightness fades. Bread travels, aroma dies on the way. Industrial food needs a translator between memory and maintenance. Chemists step in. Early flavor houses grow out of perfume ateliers, bringing secrecy with them. Clients send coded briefs. Formulas go into vaults. The business model is simple. Sell a signature, not just a smell. If every batch tastes identical, a factory can promise Tuesday tastes like Tuesday forever. Brands need that promise. Flavorists, quiet, precise, methodical, make it real. Regulation lags. Patent medicine bottles claim miracles. Bitters claim cures. The Pure Food and Drug Act arrives in 1906, more broom than scalpel. It chases the worst lies but leaves a wide field where flavor is function, not confession. As long as the additive's job is taste, not nutrition, the label can stay vague. That vagueness becomes a market. Here's a micro-story. A soda formulator in 1938, call him Walter, stands over a steel tank with a clipboard. He's built a citrus top note that pops even after months in glass. He watches a panel sip and nod. The recipe becomes code 7C19. The company lawyers lock the page away. Walter's breakthrough becomes a brand's heartbeat he'll never own. He walks home past a billboard advertising that taste, his taste, without his name on it. The public meets the drink, not the chemist. 2 world wars teach industry fast lessons: dehydrate, reconstitute, standardize. Soldiers come home with a palate calibrated to rations that always taste the same. Post-war supermarkets explode. Aisles stretch, packaging shouts, food companies scale. To win the cart, you need 3 things: shelf life, safety, and something that feels like home when you open the box. Flavor houses deliver that third thing at 1,000%. Secrecy hardens into culture. Flavorists sign NDAs. Labs get windowless rooms with code names. Clients ask for a strawberry that reads ripe but won't fight yogurt acid at pH 4.2. The answer isn't a fruit, it's a chord. You can't copyright strawberry. You can protect a formula, so the formula becomes the moat. The science moves too. Receptors on the tongue start to get mapped. Sweet isn't just sweet, it's a receptor family. Savory gets a proper name, umami, and a mechanism. With receptors come levers. If you know where to press, you can stretch sugar, amplify salt, make a tomato taste like a summer day during February in Ohio. The gap between farm and factory doesn't close, it's engineered around. But the public wants to feel good about what they eat. Artificial starts to sound like risk, even when the molecule is identical. Natural sounds like a field, a hand, a vine. In the 1970s and 1980s, as processed foods conquer breakfast and snacks, the word natural lands on packages like a passport stamp. It doesn't mean what shoppers think it means, but it moves product. Marketing departments learn to aim for that halo. Flavor houses learn to write formulas that pass through it. Another micro-story. A junior flavorist in Cincinnati is told to fix a cereal's milk bowl aroma. He warms a mixture of lactones that smell like coconut cream shadows and adds a breath of vanillin, just enough to read like comfort without turning cake-like. The sensory panel smiles. Children will taste 10 seconds of milk on dry flakes. It'll feel nostalgic for a morning they never had. Meanwhile, regulatory language evolves around function. A flavor's job is to provide taste. If it does that, it's a flavor. Whether it rode in on a carrier, saw a solvent, or came out of a fermentation tank matters less than what it does on the tongue. The door that opens isn't a loophole, it's a hallway the industry builds into a boulevard. Inside, a new hierarchy forms: natural, nature-identical, artificial. Consumers don't see the footnotes, they see one word. There's a deeper shift happening in the pantry. When taste stabilizes, memory stabilizes. The brain ties brand to feeling. If every cookie tastes the same in every city, a company owns a piece of your childhood with inventory control. That's power you can roll out globally. Flavor houses become partners in expansion. A strawberry for dairy in Europe isn't the same strawberry that survives hot-fill beverages in Asia. One house can tune both and hand a client a family of signatures knit together by a few core molecules. This is the moment the natural label meets industrial reality. The word promises orchards. The recipe requires engineering. And 3 molecules, one sweet, one savory, one green, become the fastest way to carry that promise across oceans. The legal magic trick. What natural flavor really means. To understand the glow around that single word, we need to read the fine print the way a lawyer does and a shopper doesn't. In US regulation, flavor is defined by what it does provide taste rather than how it got to your spoon. If its function is flavor, it lives under a different set of rules. And natural doesn't mean a strawberry was squeezed into your yogurt. It means the flavoring constituents came from plant or animal material or from processes the law treats as nature adjacent. Here's the hinge. The FDA 21 CFR 101.22 lets natural flavor include essential oils, oleoresins, distillates, and products of roasting, heating, or enzymolysis. It can ride on carriers. It can be dissolved in solvents. It can be built through fermentation. If the active flavor constituents trace back to a natural source or a process treated as nature adjacent, the label can say natural flavor. The shopper sees a field. The chemist sees a flowchart. A flavorist can take a cheap sugar beet or rice bran side stream, coax microbes to turn ferulic acid into vanillin, purify the crystals, and blend them into a dairy-stable system with an approved carrier. On a package, that's natural flavor. The same vanillin made from petrochemical guaiacol would be artificial, even though the molecule on your tongue is identical. Your receptors don't check passports. The label does. There's a second door: enzymes and yeast. If you break down proteins with enzymes to free glutamate, you can list yeast extract or hydrolyzed vegetable protein and still claim no MSG added. It's accurate as a labeling statement. It's also incomplete contextually. The umami effect reaches the same receptor. The law separates roots. Biology doesn't. This is where solvents and carriers hide in plain sight. Natural flavor can legally include small amounts of processing aids, alcohols, glycols, emulsifiers, so long as they serve the flavor and are permitted. You won't see every helper named. You'll see the umbrella term. It was built that way, to keep formulas protected and ingredient decks short. A micro moment at a label meeting. A brand manager flips a mock-up. Can we drop artificial flavors? The regulatory lead answers. If we switch to the bioconverted vanillin and the green note from plant distillate, yes. Carriers stay inside natural flavor. The panel nods. The taste won't change. The word on the front will. Consumers read natural as better, cleaner, safer. Surveys show a halo effect. People will pay more and worry less. But natural in this context is about provenance on paper, not the presence of actual fruit, not the absence of processing. A sparkling water labeled natural lime flavor may never meet a lime. It may be a quart of terpenes and aldehydes sourced from orange peels and pine needles, rooted through a still and a spreadsheet, and legally natural. The difference with artificial flavors is, again, source. Artificial flavors may use the exact molecules made by different chemistry. On the tongue, cis-3-hexenol from cut leaves and cis-3-hexenol from a synthetic root smell like fresh grass either way. In the Code of Regulations, only one can wear the natural badge. Industry lives in that seam. The carve-outs matter. Fermentation is a favorite. If a microbe can produce a target molecule starting from natural feedstocks, that output can be natural. Enzyme-tweaked citrus oils become natural grapefruit. Thermal processing creates reaction flavors, those roasted, meaty notes you taste in soups and snacks, and if the inputs are natural, the result is too. Heat, enzymes, microbe factories, all treated as extensions of nature when the inputs qualify. Now the perception gap. People imagine fewer steps, fewer vats, fewer intermediates. The truth is often more complicated. The legal framework was designed to protect trade secrets and to focus on safety and function, not to narrate the journey of each molecule. So packages tell you almost nothing. They don't have to. Natural flavor is a one-line story covering a library of roots. There's a parallel on the safety side. GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Many flavoring substances are evaluated by expert panels, industry or independent, and logged as safe at intended levels, often aligning with FEMA GRAS and international assessments. It's dose and use that matter. Again, that's functional safety, not a romance of orchards. And it leaves room for a lot of modern tools behind a single comforting word. A small example clarifies the scale. A strawberry yogurt lists milk, strawberries, sugar, natural flavor. The natural flavor can be dozens of compounds: ethyl butyrate for fruit brightness, vanillin for warmth, lactones for creaminess, cis-3-hexenol for fresh green lift, a whisper of sulfur for realism, all sourced through natural roots, all dissolved in carriers, all tiny. Together they shout, strawberry. This isn't illegal sleight of hand. It's a system that matches industrial needs, consistent taste, short labels, protected IP. But it trains a palate. Over time, natural becomes a brand standard, not a farm standard. Your expectation of strawberry narrows to a reproducible chord because that's what can survive factories, shipping, and 12 months in cold chain. So when a flavorist reaches for 3 vials, sweet, savory, green, they're not being lazy. They're doing what the law rewards and the market demands. If labels won't tell you why everything tastes familiar, your tongue will. And it's about to meet the gatekeepers. The 3 chemicals. Gatekeepers of natural taste. Think of the flavor system like a mixing board. Most dials are tiny, nudging nuance. 3 are big sliders that move everything at once: vanillin for comfort and sweetness, glutamates for savoriness and depth, and cis-3-hexenol for freshness, the green breath that makes fruit feel alive. They don't build a whole song, but they set the key. With those levers, a flavorist can align a product with what your brain reads as natural in seconds. Start with vanillin. It's the anchor that makes a cold dairy base feel warm and familiar. In a cone of real vanilla, vanillin is one voice in a chorus of more than 200 volatiles. In industry, it's the soloist. Even at microscopic levels, vanillin tells your memory, safe, sweet, home. When it's sourced through a root the law treats as natural, say, microbes fed ferulic acid from rice bran or clove-derived eugenol, it becomes a workhorse for natural labels. Your receptors don't care about the passport. Your mind cares about the association. Vanillin can soften edges in yogurt, round bitterness in protein shakes, and carry bakery notes across continents without changing planes. Then there's the savory amplifier, glutamates. On paper, monosodium glutamate is one salt of a common amino acid. On the tongue, glutamate hits the umami receptor and tells your brain this is satisfying, rich, complete. The industry play isn't to shout MSG. It's to assemble the same effect with natural building blocks: yeast extract, tomato concentrate, hydrolyzed vegetable proteins, mushroom powders, each full of free glutamate and often paired with 5 nucleotides like IMP and GMP for a 1-2 punch. You read no MSG added, which can be true, while your receptors register the same savory lift. That's not a trick of chemistry so much as a choice of root and language. Now the green note, cis-3-hexenol and its companion hexenols. One drop can turn a flat strawberry into something that smells like the fruit just split under a knife. It's the cut grass molecule, the scent of bruised leaves. In natural builds, it often comes from plant distillates or fermentation that qualify under the rules. Used right, it doesn't smell grassy. It smells like life inside fruit. Used heavy, it tips toward lawn clippings. The art is dose, microliters in a vat. The aim is a moment. First sniff, first sip, where your brain says freshly picked, even if the product never saw a field. Why these 3? They sit close to hardwired levers. Vanillin plugs into learned comfort loops around dairy and dessert. Glutamate binds a receptor that evolved to find protein and savor meat broths. Cis-3-hexenol triggers a signal your brain links to plant vitality and ripeness. They're cheap to scale, stable across categories, and incredibly flexible. That makes them perfect for a supply chain that hates surprises and a branding system that needs sameness to feel like trust. A flavorist building a natural strawberry for a yogurt starts with acid and sugar targets. They reach for ethyl butyrate to sketch fruit brightness, then slide in a trace of vanillin to warm the base, a whisper of lactones to make it creamy, and a pinprick of cis-3-hexenol to lift the first impression. If the same brand wants a savory snack with natural punch, the lab will skip MSG and use yeast extract blended with roasted onion and a touch of nucleotide. 2 completely different products, one common strategy. Pull the big sliders first, then paint in detail. There's a pattern here that explains why so many natural foods taste familiar across aisles. Seltzers with lime lean on citrus terpenes, plus that green breath to read like a wedge squeezed over ice. Protein bars that threaten chalky notes get rescued by vanillin's warmth and a caramelized edge built from reaction flavors made with natural inputs. Sauces cut salt by leaning on glutamates and nucleotides to keep impact while shaving sodium. These are not accidents. They're the shortest paths to your yes. A micro story from a bench. A flavorist is asked to make a strawberry that feels farmer's market but survives pasteurization. Batch 1 leans fruity, but after heat it thins out. Batch 2 adds more ethyl butyrate to candy. Batch 3 drops the fruit note and nudges cis-3 hexenol by a hair. Suddenly the top pops, the middle holds, the panel smiles. The vanillin stays steady to keep the dairy cozy. The brief reads authentic. The spreadsheet reads hit. There are trade-offs. Relying on these gatekeepers can simplify palates. A vanilla built on vanillin alone teaches you to expect a narrower band. Savory foods tuned with yeast extract can hit hard but flatten nuance if overused. Green notes can fake freshness so well that actual ripeness has to compete. But in a market built on speed, consistency, and comfort, these molecules aren't shortcuts, they're the infrastructure. So when you taste natural across yogurt, chips, and sparkling water, you're tasting a design. 3 molecules do the heavy lifting: vanillin grounding sweetness, glutamates deepening savor, and cis-3 hexenol breathing life into fruit. They're legal, scalable, and dependable. A private language between labs and your tongue that writes the first line of almost every natural story today. Vanillin, the illusion of vanilla. Vanilla begins as a flower with a deadline. The orchid opens for a few hours. Unless a human pollinates it by hand, one flower at a time, the pod never forms. Most of the world's supply grows in Madagascar, on vines that wrap around trees and people's schedules. Storms don't care about schedules. Cyclones flatten vines, prices spike, middlemen win. Demand doesn't pause because the weather does. Ice cream companies still need vanilla to taste like vanilla in February in Denver during a promotion week. Here's where vanillin steps in, wearing the vanilla costume. In a real bean, vanillin is one of hundreds of aromatic compounds, tiny amounts of smoky, floral, spicy, even leathery notes that rise and fall as the pod cures. That complexity is what a pastry chef pays for. But industry needs a single switch that flips vanilla on in milk, in cereal, in nutrition shakes, and stays on 6 months later. Vanillin does the job. It's one molecule, reliable, and it hits the memory loop hard. Natural vanillin isn't scraped from orchids. The law allows it to be made by transforming natural feedstocks. A common route starts with ferulic acid from rice bran or corn byproducts. Microbes in stainless tanks chew it, step by step, into vanillin. Another route starts with eugenol from clove oil. Either way, the output is purified crystals, white, needle-like, and almost aggressively familiar. Put those crystals into a carrier that plays nicely with dairy fat and acidity, and you've got a natural flavor ready for 1,000,000 pints. The ice cream test gives away the gap. Take cream, sugar, a pinch of salt, split it. One batch gets a careful infusion of real vanilla, specks, tannins, awkward edges. The other gets a precise 0.05% vanillin. The second pint shouts louder on the first spoon. It reads clean, bright vanilla in quotation marks. The first pint wanders, warmth here, a woody shadow there, less efficient, more human. After a week, most supermarket tasters pick the vanillin pint as more vanilla. Efficiency trains preference. Price locks the training in. Real vanilla extract rides global risk. A bad storm doubles costs. Harvest problems make brands scramble. Vanillin rides fermentation contracts and commodity streams. Natural biovanillin undercuts extract by orders of magnitude. When your margin lives in pennies per carton, you run the math. Labels keep their halo, taste stays steady, and the savings buy an ad campaign. Meanwhile, farmers face the math too. A grower in Sava sees the sky turn black and knows what it means for next season's school fees. When vines go down, buyers switch to biovanillin without a pause. The world doesn't stop wanting vanilla cones because a sea warmed 2 degrees. The decoupling is complete. Flavor supply doesn't track landscapes anymore, it tracks reactors and logistics. Inside the lab, vanillin isn't a blunt tool, it's a color wash. In yogurt, it tucks sharp acids behind a soft curtain. In protein shakes, it distracts from the cardboard buzz of certain isolates. In cereals, a microdose turns plain into comfort. Flavorists thread it carefully. Too much and you get frosting. Too little and the dairy reads thin. They pair it with lactones that hint at coconut or peach skin to mimic vanilla's creamy edges. They anchor it with a hint of smoky phenols if the brief asks for bean-like instead of cake-like. There's also the problem of drift. Vanillin is volatile. Time, oxygen, and light push it around. A natural vanilla for ice cream needs to sit tight in frozen fat. A natural vanilla for hot-fill puddings needs to survive heat without turning bitter. Flavor houses build slightly different systems, same vanillin heartbeat, different protective shells. A global brand can move their vanilla across categories and countries because one molecule ties the family together. The palate learns the tie. Kids grow up on vanillin-forward vanilla. They love it. Put a scoop of single-origin vanilla next to their favorite cone, and the real bean might taste confusing, too woody, too quiet, too alive. That doesn't make vanillin fake. It makes it a standard that pushed the other standard to the edge of the market. Marketing leans into the comfort. Made with natural flavors. Vanilla. The picture on the front shows a flower, not a fermentation tank. The claim is legal. The taste is genuine to the memory it's built. The illusion is that vanillin tastes like vanilla. The illusion is that it stands in for everything that vanilla means, a plant, a place, a season, and that there's no gap between meaning and molecule. There's a moment in every reformulation meeting when cost, supply risk, and consumer surveys line up and point to the same line item. Switching from extract to natural vanillin doesn't change the panel score. It stabilizes procurement. It tightens labels. It protects IP. It also pulls one more strand of complexity out of the food system and replaces it with something we can control. Control is the point. Vanillin gives companies control over taste, over spend, over marketing language. It gives your brain exactly what it expects when the word vanilla appears. And once that expectation sets, it travels. From cones to cookies to plant-based milks, the same molecule carries the same comfort into new spaces. The orchid keeps blooming on wrappers. The flower in the field is mostly a story now. Glutamates, building craveability without saying MSG. Sweetness coaxes, umami convinces. When vanillin carries comfort, glutamate carries satisfaction. The feeling that a sauce is complete, a chip is worth one more handful. The science is straightforward. Glutamate unlocks the umami receptor. Pair it with 5 nucleotides like IMP or GMP and the effect multiplies. That synergy is why a sip of broth can feel like a meal and why a dusting on a snack can bend your will. Industry learned decades ago that 3 letters, MSG, could trip alarms on a label, even as the molecule itself was cleared at typical levels of use. So manufacturers took a side road that leads to the same place. They stopped talking about monosodium glutamate and started stocking their warehouses with ingredients that carry free glutamate naturally. Yeast extract made by breaking yeast proteins with enzymes, hydrolyzed vegetable proteins from soy or wheat, long-cooked tomato concentrates, mushroom powders, seaweed fractions. Put them together and you've built the same umami engine under a different hood. A micro-story from a factory floor. A snack brand loves the punch of their barbecue chip but hates the optics of MSG. The brief lands on a flavor house desk. Same crave, friendlier label. The flavorist maps the original. Sodium levels, heat processing, oil pickup, dusting adhesion. Then they swap the heart of the system, MSG out, yeast extract in, layered with a touch of disodium inosinate and guanylate to replace synergy, roasted onion for browning notes, and a smoked paprika fraction to round the mid-palate. In Pilot, the panel calls it even meatier. The bag now reads, no MSG added. The crave stays. Restaurants play the same chords. A ramen shop steeping kombu and katsuobushi extracts glutamate and nucleotides into the broth. No powder needed. A pizza place leans on a long-simmered tomato sauce and aged cheese to lift umami. Packaged foods take those kitchen truths and compress them into ingredients that travel and comply with rules. The receptor doesn't care if the glutamate rode in on a kelp infusion or a yeast extract spray-dried onto maltodextrin. It binds either way. Health narratives swirl around this aisle. Some people report sensitivity to MSG. Controlled studies and major reviews haven't found consistent effects at usual dietary levels, especially when consumed with food rather than as a bolus. The sodium piece is more concrete. MSG delivers saltiness with less sodium than table salt, which makes it useful for cutting sodium without losing impact. Yeast extract and HVP can do similar work, helping a soup hit deep while shaving milligrams. That's a legitimate benefit if it isn't used to hide how hard the rest of the formula leans on intensity. The real leverage is behavioral. Umami shortens the distance between first bite and second. It makes you linger. In sauces, it fills the hollow that low-fat formulas can leave. In plant-based meats, it stands in for browned collagen and dripping fat. A veggie burger reads burger because glutamate and nucleotides tell your brain to expect savory depth, even when the protein is pea or soy. Here, where language does heavy lifting. Yeast extract reads like bread and beer. Hydrolyzed sounds clinical, so it gets retired when possible. Natural flavors can cover reaction flavors built from amino acids and sugars, still natural when the inputs qualify that contribute roasted meaty notes. No MSG added is true in the narrow sense, no monosodium glutamate in the ingredient list, while the total free glutamate in the product might be higher than before. Labels address inputs. Tongues judge outcomes. Case study condensed. A canned soup line wants to hit a sodium target for a retailer program. First pass, cut salt by 15%. The soup tastes thin. The team adds yeast extract for mid-palate, a touch of disodium inosonate for pop, and tomato concentrate to raise natural glutamates. Sensory panel rates saltiness equal to the original at lower sodium. A shopper compares labels and applauds. The brand keeps the mouthfeel. The retailer gets the claim. The brain gets the same signal of satisfaction. There's craft behind the curtain. Glutamate alone can feel flat if you don't shape the attack and finish. Flavorists use Maillard-derived notes from natural amino acids and sugars to give a browned edge. They manage pH so umami doesn't fight acidity. They balance kokumi, those mouthfulness notes from peptides and amino acids, so the center of the flavor feels thick, not muddy. They test in real matrices, oil on chips, heat in retorts, freeze-thaw in entrees. Umami has to survive the journey. Myths persist. People conflate MSG with headaches. Others assume yeast extract is MSG in disguise. The clearer statement is simpler. Yeast extract contains glutamate and other taste-active compounds. It's not the same ingredient as MSG, but it can produce similar sensory results because the receptor reads glutamate, not the label. For those who avoid MSG for personal reasons, that matters. For everyone else, the question is less about names and more about how often you chase that hit. The impact on habits shows up in small acts. You finish a serving and pour a little more sauce. You open another mini bag. You add an extra spoonful of plant-based chili that tastes hearty. None of this is a conspiracy. It's a practiced use of biology. When companies need to reduce sugar or fat, they often raise umami and aroma to keep pleasure steady. The strategy works. There's a line between building satisfaction and building loops. Glutamates can help lower sodium and make vegetables taste better at home. They can also make a low-calorie snack feel more rewarding than it is, encouraging frequency. In both cases, the molecule does what it always does, tells your brain this bite matters. Industry decides where to point that tool. So the second vial, the savory one, rarely says MSG anymore. It says yeast extract, tomato, mushroom, hydrolyzed protein. It sits under grilled flavors behind roasted claims inside frozen meals that feel like comfort. Vanillin taught comfort to sweets. Glutamate teaches completion to everything else. And when those two hold the base, the third vial, the green breath, can sell you on freshness in a single sniff. The green note, cis-3-hexenol and the fresh illusion. Freshness has a sound, knife through fruit, cell walls popping, a mist of green hitting the air. The nose translates that moment with a tiny set of molecules, and one in particular does the heavy lifting, cis-3-hexenol, leaf alcohol. It's the scent of a plant defending itself, a signal of broken leaves and bright life. In flavor labs, a microdrop can turn a dull strawberry into something that smells like it still has sun on it. That's the point. Sell the first sniff as just cut. Then let sugar and acid carry the rest. In real fruit, green notes sit low, barely there, part of a shifting mix. In industry, they're a lever. A natural strawberry flavor might be mostly esters and lactones with a trace of vanillin for warmth, and then right at the top, cis-3-hexenol, measured in parts per million to lift the opening. The dose is ruthless. Too little and the fruit feels cooked. Too much and you're in lawn clippings. The sweet spot is a breath you notice and forget at the same time. Your brain marks it as ripeness, without a debate. Where does natural green come from? Plants make it when their membranes tear, so distillates from leaves can carry it. Fermentation can make it too. Microbes coax to turn natural feedstocks into hexenols and hexenols that pass regulatory tests for natural flavor. The petrochemical roots exist, but those live in the artificial bucket, even if the atom-for-atom structure is identical. Again, the label tracks origin, not effect. Your receptor calls it fresh either way. The aldehyde cousins, cis-3-hexenol, trans-2-hexenol matter as well. Aldehydes hit sharper, greener, more astringent. A flavorist toggles ratios to decide whether the fruit opens like the first day it's edible or like it's underripe and squeaky. For apple, brighter aldehydes push toward Granny Smith. For strawberry, a softer alcohol keeps it friendly. Add tiny sulfur notes and you land closer to real life, where strawberries have a hint of funk under the perfume. Beverages love this trick. A seltzer labeled natural lime rarely contains lime juice. Acids would cloud the water and kill shelf life. Instead, citrus terpenes sketch the peel, a light citral hit gives lemon-lime direction, and a whisper of cis-3-hexenol makes your first sniff feel like a wedge was just squeezed. The carbonation throws aroma up the glass. The top note does its job in 1 second. By the time you swallow, the green has faded, replaced by bitter peel and clean finner. You still read it as fresh. Micro-story from a pilot plant. A developer is chasing orchard strawberry for a kid's drink with no sugar. The early build is candy bright but thin. Heat processing kills the top. She adds more ethyl butyrate, too gummy. Then she shifts the green, drops cis-3-hexenol, raises cis-3-hexenol by a hair, adds a trace of hexyl acetate for juice-like glide. Suddenly the nose opens, the mid doesn't collapse, and the panel calls it real strawberry. There's no strawberry inside the drum, but the cue worked. Marketers understand the cue. Fresh picked, farm stand, bright, crisp. Those words ride on a molecule that's famous in lawns, not orchards, yet belongs in both. Consumers learn the association fast. A yogurt that smells faintly green at the lid tastes fruitier than the same yogurt without the lift, even with identical sugar and acid. That's how the green note earns its place next to vanillin and glutamates as a gatekeeper. It writes the opening line. There's a risk in relying on it. When freshness is faked well, real seasoned fruit can seem messy. A June strawberry carries floral highs 1 week and jammy lows the next. The green might be loud on Monday and gone by Friday. A standardized green top trains you to expect the same start every time. That narrows the idea of ripe to a single profile, the one that travels. Technically, green is fragile. Hexenols can flip to hexenols. Oxygen reshapes them. Heat knocks them down. Flavorists build protection, antioxidants in the flavor system, emulsions that keep volatiles tucked until the package opens, matrix choices that slow loss. A chilled beverage holds green better than a hot cereal. A fat matrix catches and releases notes differently than water. This is why the same natural strawberry has different versions for yogurt, seltzer, and fruit leather. Even though the top breath is the same idea, green also plays outside fruit. Tomato sauces lean on leaf notes to feel garden fresh after retort processing. Salad dressings get a pinch to make herbs pop. Even some plant-based meats borrow a green edge to suggest chopped parsley and chopped onion without adding produce that wilts. Used sparingly, it reads as life. Push it, and it reads as cut grass on steak. One more bench moment. A brand wants just sliced apple in shelf-stable pouches. The first pass reads baked. The team reduces warm lactones, raises hexenol for snap, then buffers with small amounts of ionon derivatives to hint at peel. A drop of cis-3-hexenol lands the inhale. The taste is still pasteurized apple, but the nose tells a different story. The pouch wins a Clean Label Kids award. The ingredients never met an orchard. None of this is lying. It's design within rules that prize safety and consistency. The green note earns its keep because it's efficient. A microdose that turns processed into present tense. And once your nose buys the first second, everything that follows gets graded on a curve marked fresh. The quiet giants. How one company shapes global taste. While the green note is quietly doing its magic, something louder, though still invisible, runs the show. The flavor world looks fragmented from the aisle, but zoom out and you see a handful of houses steering taste for entire categories. A beverage launch in Chicago and a biscuit in Jakarta can trace their signatures to the same lab in the same building under different code names. Consolidation didn't just shrink the vendor list, it concentrated a palate and standardized the playbook. Inside these houses, everything is compartmentalized. Client names become numbers. Project Orchard 42 might be a strawberry for dairy. Horizon Delta might be a hot fill fruit base for Asia. Doors need badges and signatures. Sensory rooms hold trained panels, people who can tell you a 0.2 ppm shift in cis-3-hexenol moved a strawberry from ripe to raw. They aren't guessing. They're scoring to a brand's private lexicon. Creamy, warm, top pop, mid-cohesion, finish clean. A sales brief arrives and sets the rhythm. Global rollout Q3, dairy first, then beverages, clean label required. Cost target 9 cents per kilo flavor dose. That target isn't a suggestion, it's a fence. The flavorist builds inside it, choosing routes that keep natural flavor on the deck and the COA compliant across jurisdictions. The result isn't a one-off, it's a portfolio. Dairy-stable strawberry, hot-fill strawberry, carbonated water strawberry. 3 versions, 1 family. A brand can launch in 5 countries without retraining taste. Here's how lock-in happens. A client reformulates a yogurt to a house's signature strawberry. Over months, the processing equipment gets tuned to that flavor's behavior, how it emulsifies, how it handles pH, how it survives shear. Switching suppliers later isn't just swapping a line item, it's risking drift. The legal contract might not say forever, but the plant does. A quiet moat forms around a note. Meanwhile, procurement pulls levers only giants can reach. Vanilla prices double after a cyclone. The house shifts clients onto a natural vanillin system with matching sensory curves. Citrus oils run short from greening disease. The house's hedging and co-ops in multiple regions keep peel fractions flowing. A boutique supplier can't smooth those shocks. A giant can, and charges for the insurance baked into always the same. A junior flavorist, call her Myra, gets her first global brief. Signature strawberry for dairy and plant milks must read fresh picked at cold temps, 0 artificial flavors, reduced sugar product line. She builds 3 chords, 1 for dairy fat, 1 for oats beta-glucans, 1 for almonds volatile baggage. Each gets the same core triad, ethyl butyrate, vanillin, cis-3-hexenol, tuned to matrix. She runs triangle tests until the panel can't tell dairy from plant at the top note. The brand launches with 1 tagline, 1 photo, 1 promise. The taste crosses categories because 1 lab stitched it together. Secrecy protects that stitch. Formulas sit in encrypted databases with access logs. A senior reviewer checks that every component's route qualifies as natural in target markets. Europe may accept some fermentation routes that the US questions. The US may allow carriers a retailer won't tolerate. The house keeps parallel versions ready. A brand manager hears, "We can keep your copy unchanged," and signs another region to the plan. Black box culture extends to the language outside the lab. Sales decks speak in outcomes, not ingredients. 25% salt reduction with no perceived loss. Vanilla warmth equal to premium extract at 1/3 cost. Freshness top note stability over 90 days in chilled. The client never sees the list of microdoses that achieve those outcomes. They don't want to. If the taste scores match and the claims hold, the rest is a luxury they can skip. Dependency grows in ordinary ways. A soup company leans on a house's reaction flavor built from amino acids and sugars to hit roasted chicken without chicken. The note becomes the base for 10 SKUs. Years later, supply gets tight. The house allocates volume to its biggest clients first. Everyone else waits, reformulates in a hurry, or pays to move up the queue. The quiet giants don't just sell taste, they ration insurance. This scale reaches into agriculture too. When a house commits to a natural route, it arranges feedstock, ferulic acid, certain leaf distillates, specific mushroom strains through long contracts. A change in one client's brief can ripple back to farmers or fermentation plants in 3 countries. A sudden shift toward berry, season in beverages can redirect cis-3-hexenol demand from perfumery to flavor overnight. The orchard isn't calling the tune. The calendar in a Swiss or Dutch headquarters is. There's a comfort for brands in surrendering this control. One house can harmonize a portfolio. Savory cube for West Africa, dairy dessert for the Gulf, kid drinks for North America, into a recognizable family you can't quite name but always recognize. That recognition is equity. The more equity you build, the harder it is to leave the partner who keeps it intact. For consumers, the outcome is subtle but huge. Different packages from different companies start to feel like cousins. The warm vanilla in your cereal talks to the warm vanilla in your plant milk. The fresh strawberry in your yogurt nods at the fresh strawberry in your seltzer. The illusion of diversity survives on shelves because labels and logos change faster than chords. Behind them, a few labs conduct most of the music. None of this is illegal or even unusual. It's the efficiency model of modern food, tuned over a century. The twist is simple. If molecules are the paint, these houses hold most of the palettes, and one company's set can color a continent. Which raises the next question every brief circles around but never prints. How is a natural flavor actually built, note by note, rule by rule, until it feels like fruit in a cup? Inside a flavor build, the natural strawberry Playbook. It starts with a brief that reads like a puzzle. Dairy base, pH 4.2, reduced sugar, cold fill, kid-friendly, natural flavor, only cost target tight. The flavorist sketches the battlefield. Acid will chew at delicate top notes, fat will smother light volatiles, protein will bind aroma. So the order matters. Build a spine, then armor it, then lift the opening so it pops when the lid peels back. First, the base math, sugar to acid. Too little sugar and strawberry tastes raw, too much and it reads candy. They taste the unflavored yogurt and set a target for perceived sweetness, not just grams. That target informs which tools can carry sweetness cues without sugar. Vanillin takes the first slot, barely there, to warm the mid and mask dairy's tang. It doesn't shout vanilla, it softens silent. Next comes the fruit architecture. Ethyl butyrate draws a quick sketch of strawberry brightness, clean, fruity, immediate. It's a top driver but unstable under acid and time, so the dose is conservative. To keep the fruit from flashing and fading, they add ethyl 2-methyl butyrate for a juicier core and a small amount of hexyl acetate to glide the mid-palate. This trio forms the recognizable red fruit frame before anything green or creamy joins the room. Now the green breath. Cis-3-hexenol is measured with a hand that knows fear. 1 microliter too far and the panel says grass. 1 microliter short and the yogurt tastes cooked. The first passes start safe, then inch upward until the first sniff reads just cut. If hot fill is in scope for a beverage variant, they'll pair the alcohol with a touch of cis-3-hexenol at bench, then convert it in system to the more stable alcohol during processing. The trick is timing, not just dose. Strawberry without cream feels thin in dairy, so they add lactones, delta-decalactone for round creaminess, gamma and decalactone for a peach skin halo that whispers ripeness. A trace of maltol or ethyl maltol lends cotton candy warmth at sub-threshold levels, not to sweeten, but to connect fruit to dairy as if they belong together from the start. If the brief bans confection, the maltol gets dialed back and the lactones carry more weight. Every choice carries a compliance shadow. The regulatory specialist checks each component's origin route. Ethyl butyrate must come from natural ethanol and butyric acid produced by fermentation to wear the natural badge. Vanillin must be bioconverted from ferulic acid, not petrol-based. Carriers, the retailer prefers organic compatible options, so propylene glycol is out. They build the flavor into a triacetin-free, glycerin-light system and consider alcohol limits for certain markets. A solvent that never reaches the label can still derail the launch. The matrix demands armor. Acids and proteins can strip top notes, so the house turns the liquid flavor into a fine emulsion. Microencapsulation around the volatile heart, emulsifiers that comply with natural antioxidants to slow oxidation of fragile hexenols and hexenols. Particle size is tuned so the emulsion disperses evenly in cold dairy without ring formation or oiling off at the surface. Stability trials run at 4 degrees C and 10 degrees C with light exposure. Because supermarket cases aren't kind, sensory iteration is ruthless. Triangle tests pit version B against A and a control. The panel rates top pop, mid cohesion, finish clean, dairy compatibility, authenticity. One taster notes a plastic edge, probably a solvent echo, so they swap in a different distillate cut for the green note. Another flags jammy drift after 7 days. The fix lowers ethyl butyrate and leans on hexyl acetate to carry fruit without candy. They test with sugar cut further, then rescue perceived sweetness by nudging vanillin and ethyl maltol a notch while keeping the copy honest. Cost engineering is a parallel lane. Real strawberry extract at useful levels explodes the budget and adds color and seed haze the plant hates, so they add a trace for legitimacy in premium SKUs and skip it in base lines. A citrus fraction that sharpened the top turns out to be short in the market. Procurement warns of price spikes. They replace it with a terpene cut from a different peel, matching terpene ratios on GC, then verifying on the tongue. There's a crisis day in every build. Heat hold testing flattens the top. CIS falls, candy rises, panel frowns. The team rebuilds, reduce aldehydes that oxidize ugly, raise the alcohol form, increase antioxidant load, add a tiny sulfur compound, dimethyl sulfide at a hair, to dirty the perfection and mimic the strange realism of real fruit. That one change shifts candy to field. Compliance signs off on natural flavor. Marketing circles with other natural flavors and asks if strawberry is honest without fruit. Regulatory answers, yes if the characterizing profile is strawberry, no requirement to include fruit itself. They carefully avoid made with real strawberries unless the spec supports it. The photo shows a dulit berry anyway. Finally, scale up. Bench to pilot changes shear, oxygen pickup, and time in mix. The emulsion breaks at high shear in tank 2. They adjust emulsifier ratio and add order of addition instructions. Flavor post-homogenization under gentle recirculation at 7 degrees C with nitrogen blanket if possible. Plant staff gets a one-page SOP because the best flavor dies in a bad process. Launch samples sit in a fridge for 12 weeks. Top pop holds at week 8, dips slightly at 10, stays acceptable at 12. The panel signs. Procurement has hedges on ferulic acid, green fractions, and lactones. Sales has a story: lower sugar, real taste, natural flavor. The cord ethyl butyrate, vanillin, cis-3 hexenol does the heavy lifting. Everything else is craft, law, and logistics, making that first spoonful feel like a June morning that fits in a cup. Clean label theater. How words outsmart worry. The strawberry cord is ready. Now comes the part that never makes it into ad copy, staging the words so they feel like food, not factory. Clean label isn't a law, it's a mood. The job is to make the ingredient deck read short, friendly, and familiar while the flavor system stays intact. Artificial flavors is a third rail. Natural flavor is a lifeline. Same tongue, different story. A brand team gathers around a printout. The original spec says artificial strawberry flavor, vanillin, propylene glycol. Legal, safe, effective, and guaranteed to lose certain retailers and nervous shoppers. The reformulation proposal reads natural flavor. The trick is upstream. Vanillin is now bioconverted from ferulic acid, green notes come from plant distillates, solvents are swapped or kept inside the umbrella term, carriers shift to alcohol or glycerin where the retailer guide allows. The taste doesn't move much, the label moves a lot. This is where solved problems become sales lines. A yeast extract system replaces MSG, and the front of pack says no MSG added. Regulatory is happy, true statement. Marketing is thrilled, fear diffused. The flavorist knows the umami engine is the same because glutamate is glutamate, but the deck now reads bread and mushrooms instead of 3 letters some people Google at midnight. Words become insulation. Spices does similar work. A soup label can list spices and natural flavor and keep a dozen sub-ingredients, black pepper extracts, celery seed distillates, roasted onion fractions off the deck. Trade secret protection is the official reason. A cleaner-looking label is the practical outcome. With other natural flavors, WONF is another favorite, especially in fruit. It signals complexity without promising the fruit itself. A strawberry with other natural flavors. Yogurt can legally contain no strawberry and still earn nods in the aisle, as long as the characterizing profile is strawberry. Fermentation gets a halo of its own. Biovanillin is pitched as nature empowered by science, derived from rice bran, made by fermentation, never grown in stainless steel. The copy Imaginese Barnes, the invoices say reactors. None of it is false, all of it is curated. A consumer flipping the carton feels close to a field. The molecule isn't lying. The narrative is just choosing its camera angle. Retailer scorecards push the theater forward. A big box chain bans certain artificial flavors and specific carriers. The flavor house adjusts routes, compiles affidavits, and returns a packet that threads the needle. All natural, no red flag carriers, compliant with country-by-country quirks. The resulting ingredient list shrinks to 8 simple words: milk, sugar, strawberries, natural flavor, pectin, cultures. Inside natural flavor, there's still a dozen compounds. You don't see them because the system was designed so you wouldn't. Micro story: a sparkling water brand wants real lime taste, nothing fake. The first prototypes use the same terpene mix, whether the label says artificial or natural. Procurement switches to peel-derived terpenes, adds a leaf alcohol fraction from plant distillates, and the label flips to natural flavors. A social post declares only natural ingredients. The can never meta lime. It doesn't need to. The smell of peel and leaf sells the poor. Reduced sodium claims lean on umami builders. Yeast extract and tomato concentrate let a sauce hit target salinity while shaving milligrams. The front says 25% less sodium. The back says natural flavor. The panel says tastes the same. The truth is practical. If the goal is less salt with equal satisfaction, glutamate is a better story than potassium chloride. The caveat is dietary, not chemical. If the sauce is so craveable you eat more, the math changes. Labels don't model behavior. Sometimes the theater is about omission. No artificial flavors appears next to a giant ripe strawberry. There's no promise of fruit percentage, no admission of solvent carriers, no mention of microencapsulation. Those details live in spec sheets, supplier letters, and regulatory binders. They don't belong on a bottle because the law says they don't have to. The result is a clean label you can read in one breath and a flavor system that could fill a textbook. Audits reveal a quiet comedy. 2 granola bars from rival brands taste nearly identical. Same warm vanilla, same faint green lift in the berry, same mid-palate richness. One deck says natural flavor. The other says vanilla extract, natural flavor. A GC trace in a lab would tell you both rely on vanillin and a similar set of esters. Shoppers feel good about both. Trust lives in font and phrasing. There's a limit line. Some retailers now require proof that strawberry on the front matches real fruit inside at a defined minimum. That pressure nudges small additions of puree or extract, enough to stabilize the claim, not enough to drive the taste. The heavy lifting stays with the chord. The law shapes language, the palate shapes loyalty. Clean label theater isn't a con, it's a choreography between risk, regulation, and reassurance. It uses accurate words to steer attention toward what feels wholesome and away from what feels technical. It works because the taste keeps its promise. The question isn't whether the label is true, it's whether the story you read on it is the one you think you're buying. Health, safety, and the palate trap. Clean labels calm nerves. Safety lives somewhere else, in dossiers, exposure estimates, and a phrase that shapes this whole world, generally recognized as safe. GRAS sounds cozy. It's a regulatory lane where qualified experts review data and conclude a substance is safe at intended use levels. Many flavor compounds ride this lane, backed by toxicology, metabolism studies, and decades of exposure. The catch isn't secret danger in a drop. It's everything that happens when drops multiply across a day. A life, a culture. Dose matters first. Flavor chemicals are used in micro amounts, parts per million in a yogurt, sometimes parts per billion in a beverage. Toxicology scales with exposure. The margins here are large. Panels read the literature, manufacturers submit data, and substances get affirmed. That's the framework. It was built to manage risk ingredient by ingredient, not to narrate the combined story of a modern diet where engineered taste nudges you toward one more serving again and again. There's a second truth running alongside. Risk rarely lives in a single molecule. It lives in patterns. A soup that hits umami hard helps you accept less salt. A cereal that leans on vanillin helps you accept less sugar. Those are wins, but if the same tools also make ultra-convenient food more compelling than the time-consuming alternative, total diet shifts. You snack more often. You cook less. You stack sweetness cues and savory cues in the same afternoon. Safety on paper becomes behavior in the pantry. Kids sit at the center of this push and pull. Children's products target kid-friendly in ways that sound innocent and are extremely effective. Softer acids, brighter fruit tops, warmer vanilla mids, trimmed bitterness. The earlier you learn that strawberry arrives with a green breath and vanillin's hug, the harder it is to love a misshapen berry with a funky week 3 note. Palate conditioning starts fast. Babies learn sweetness early from formula and purees. Toddlers meet natural flavors in squeezable pouches and yogurts. Preference tracks repetition. A micro scene from a pediatric clinic. A parent says their child won't eat fruit unless it's yogurt fruit. The dietitian hears a flavor system doing its job too well. Green for freshness, vanillin for comfort, ester brightness on top, so everything else tastes dull. The advice isn't ban flavors. It's to add variance on purpose. Roasted carrots next to raw, apples that aren't always perfect, berries across the season, not just the profile in a cup. Evidence gaps are real and awkward. Toxicologists test single compounds. Panels consider category exposures. But real life is a blend. Dozens of flavor actives, small doses, repeated daily. Interactions at these levels likely don't trigger new hazards, but we don't have elegant long-term data on combined exposure patterns shaping appetite signals, reward sensitivity, or satiety cues over decades. The plausible concern isn't poisoning, it's training. If aroma tells your brain dessert is coming, insulin and hunger loops can lean forward, sugar or no sugar. If umami tells your brain nutrients are dense, light meals can feel heavier than they are, nudging intake. Sodium is the cleanest case where engineering helps. Yeast extract and nucleotides let soups, sauces, and snacks hit satisfaction with less salt. Large food service systems use glutamate to hold flavor while dropping milligrams. Public health wins there, but a safe lever can still be overpulled. Addictive is the wrong word. Compelling is closer. Highly rewarding profiles drive repeat behavior. A label can be honest and a loop can still form. GRAS also relies on process trust. Many submissions are manufacturer-driven, sometimes via independent expert panels. Reputable houses do deep work. The system expects good faith. Critics want more federal review and more public data. The flavor industry counters with low exposures, long histories of safe use, and international evaluations that converge. Both things can be true. The risks are low, and the sunlight could be brighter. There's also the quiet erosion of tolerance for variance. Real vanilla has edges, tannins, smoke, floral flashes. Real strawberries carry sulfur whispers when they're truly ripe. When products lean on simplified chords, vanillin for warmth, ethyl butyrate for fruit, cis-3-hexenol for fresh, the palate trims its curiosity. We call this standardization, but it's more than boredom. Kids taught narrow profiles can struggle with vegetables, bitterness, fruits, seasonality, cheeses, funk. Adults drift toward foods that deliver clear, fast signals. Home cooking feels noisy by comparison. Language assists the drift. No artificial flavors reads as good. Natural flavors reads as safe. Both can be true, but safety isn't the only axis. Satiety, pacing, and variety matter. A day of high aroma, high umami, low roughage foods leaves you chasing a feeling that used to come from time at a table. The trap isn't chemical, it's calendar and habit. A simple reset helps. Cook once more a week than you do now. Buy fruit that isn't at peak and eat it anyway. Keep a salty snack you love and make the next one less flavored, not flavorless. Kids can handle bitter if you don't rescue them from it every time. Restaurants already use umami to make vegetables sing. You can too miso on eggplant, tomato paste in lentils, without building every meal like a snack aisle. The industry's responsibility isn't to make food dull. It's to keep the engineering honest. Less salt where it works, less sugar where aroma can carry pleasure, clarity on claims, and restraint on making everyday read like treat all day. Consumers can meet them halfway by seeking variance on purpose. We can keep safety in the dossier and curiosity on the plate. Meanwhile, supply chains keep tightening control. When storms hit and solvents run short, formulas bend. Your tongue notices before the label does. And when the world hiccups, the companies holding the pallets decide what natural means next. Supply chains, shortages, and flavor crises. The system looks frictionless until the weather, a pest, or a port changes the math. Vanilla is the classic pressure point. When cyclones sweep Madagascar, vines snap, curing barns flood, theft rises, and insurance jumps. Extract prices double or triple. A year later, an ice cream label still says natural flavor, but the inside has moved: more bio-vanillin, less bean, a slightly smokier cut to mimic extract, a tighter emulsion to hold what's left. The taste is close. Your memory does most of the work. Citrus is no safer. Greening disease chews through groves, yields drop, and peel oils thin out. Lime and lemon fractions get rationed. A house shifts clients from one terpenic balance to another, more gamma-terpenine here, a cleaner D-limonene there, keeping the top note familiar. Beverage teams sign off after a few rounds. Reads lime. The wedge on the can stays bright while the grove fights for its life. Then logistics pile on. A pandemic takes solvents off the market. Ethanol goes to sanitizer. Propylene glycol tightens. Export containers jam in the wrong ports. In the background, flavor houses rewrite carriers and rebalance systems. Glycerin instead of glycol where possible, alcohol cut to meet volatile organic limits, more dry encapsulation to dodge liquid bottlenecks. Specs change by a hair. The sop in the plant add flavor under nitrogen blanket. The panel notices tiny shifts. Shoppers mostly don't until they do. War moves molecules too. Sunflower oil exits one region, prices jump. A reaction flavor built on sunflower carriers has to migrate to canola or MCT without altering how it releases brown notes in a retort. A herb fraction routed through Black Sea ports goes missing. The replacement from a different latitude carries a different minor note fingerprint. Compliance signs off, procurement breathes again, and one stew suddenly feels less green and more earthy. No one knows why. A micro story from a bakery line. Tuesday night, the supplier emails. Natural orange fraction delayed 3 weeks. Wednesday morning, R&D swaps to a close cousin from another origin. The first donuts roll at dawn. 3 regulars take bites and pause. Something's different. They can't name it. The glaze looks the same. The copy on the case hasn't moved. The shop keeps moving trays. By Friday, the new fraction is the new normal. Natural volatility is part of the bargain. Plant-derived fractions swing with weather and yield. Fermentation routes calm some of that, but feedstocks still live in fields, rail yards, and geopolitics. Synthetic roots are flat lines, reliable, cheap, identical, but they fall under artificial and trigger retailer bans or brand rules. So companies hedge, dual-root specs, multiple approved cuts of the same molecule, and rolling safety stocks of the fragile top notes that define first sniff. Contracts become survival tools. A big house locks citrus peel from multiple hemispheres, hedges vanillin feedstocks, keeps relationships with distillers who can pivot to flavor-grade ethanol when sanitizer demand fades. Smaller brands piggyback through their suppliers or accept drift. During the pandemic, some houses created continuity kits, pre-approved substitutions for common notes with matched GC fingerprints and panel targets, so clients could reformulate without redoing label. The quiet giants turned chaos into line items. Investors watch the same storms and see margin. Natural claims can command price, and scarcity can justify hikes. A brand lifts list price while swapping to lower-cost natural roots and preserving ratings. The spread covers freight and then some. In earnings calls, phrases like pricing actions and mix improvements mask how a bio-vanillin contract shielded a dessert line while a cyclone tore roofs off curring barns an ocean away. Those barns aren't abstractions. A farmer stares at flattened vines and knows which buyers will vanish first. When flavor supply decouples from fields, the field still pays. A surge in biovanillin doesn't fix a flooded village. A pivot from lime to citrus WONF doesn't rebuild a grove. The resilience sits upstream in labs and contracts. The fragility sits on trellises and trunks. For consumers, the crisis arrives as déjà vu that doesn't quite land. A soda's lime edge feels thinner. A favorite cookie's vanilla warmth runs brighter, less woody. A soup feels equally salty on paper but emptier in the middle. Labels don't change. The flavor system does quietly within the rules. A few people tweet, most adapt. Palates can be retrained by drift as easily as by design. There's a lesson buried in the chaos. The promise of sameness is always conditional. When solvents vanish, peels shrink, or ships stop, natural flavor becomes a moving target that still hits the claim. The gatekeeper molecules, vanillin's warmth, glutamate's depth, green's breath, hold the center. Everything else flexes. The industry calls it continuity. You might call it controlled blur. The counter-movement. Real food, real variability. There's a quiet resistance running alongside the engineered chord, and it sounds messy on purpose. Small producers started leaning into what big brands sand off, season, place, and the wobble in between. A craft soda maker in Portland buys flats of late-season seascape strawberries, macerates them with sugar, and carbonates the juice. One batch runs floral, the next jammy. The label doesn't promise sameness, it promises fruit. Some weeks, customers rave. Some weeks, they ask if the recipe changed. It did. The field changed. Chefs play this game in public. A pastry chef swaps beans by origin, Tonga for smoke, Tahiti for floral, and prints the farm name on the menu. Guests taste vanilla as a family, not a single note. A ramen shop prints this week's kombu on a chalkboard because the umami crawls a few ticks when the sea is warm. They aren't rejecting science. They're using it where it feels honest and letting nature handle the rest. Labels get plainer, not purer. Strawberries, sugar, lemon replaces natural flavors. A yogurt lists vanilla extract and ground vanilla bean and accepts a shorter shelf life and darker flecks. A snack brand drops no MSG added and leans into slow-roasted tomato and mushroom to explain its savory punch without the theater. They still use tools, acid control, water activity, pasteurization, but they stop pretending strawberries are a fixed scent typed in a lab. Consumers who want this have to work. They read back labels, email brands, and learn a few phrases, WONF, extractives, yeast extract, that decode choices. They accept that a perfect strawberry note in January probably isn't an honest one unless it's frozen fruit from June. They buy a second jar when the first batch is weird but good. They shift from always the same to always itself. There are trade-offs. Real variability costs money. Fruit is heavy, shipping is brutal, spoilage hurts. A small soda maker can't hedge citrus greening with 5 hemispheres of peel oil. A dairy using real vanilla can't hit $1 menu price. Convenience has teeth, and variance is a tough sell to kids raised on steady chords. Some weeks, the counter-movement tastes like a smaller audience and a thinner margin. Tech tries to bridge the gap. Precision fermentation firms chase complex extracts that aren't just single molecules, vanilla fractions that include the woody, smoky, floral side singers, citrus essences with peel bitterness intact without the pith. If the feedstocks are natural and the microbes do the shaping, those outputs can still wear natural flavor in many markets, but the point isn't the label, it's the layered taste. The promise is scale. A steadier supply of complexity, not just a cheap stand-in. Home kitchens are the biggest lab. People salt tomatoes with miso to show their kids why umami belongs with fruit. They roast strawberries to intensify low season and serve raw peak season berries without sugar to let the sulfur whispers through. They stop chasing freshness with green notes and chase it with time. Buy, eat, repeat when fruit is ripe, skip when it is. Palates bend back faster than you think when repetition changes course. Retailers can help. Some set standards. If strawberry is on the front, there's a minimum inside. Others add tags for products without natural flavors, not as a warning but as a map. It's imperfect, it's a nudge. A buyer takes a chance on a regional brand with transparent labels and gives them an end cap. You taste the aisle shift because someone in a back office decided sameness wasn't the only kind of trust, social proof that sparks curiosity. The counter-movement doesn't need to win every shelf. It needs to keep a lane open where flavor maps to ingredients and seasons, where a child's idea of vanilla includes smoke and flour, where fresh comes from cells breaking under a knife, not a vial. The three gatekeeper molecules don't disappear, they lose monopoly status. Vanillin shares the stage with tannins. Glutamate sits next to long-cooked bones, beans, and kombu. The green note yields to chlorophyll when you chop herbs yourself. This isn't nostalgia, it's option value. A food system with both chords and choruses can absorb shortages without losing meaning. When a cyclone hits, a brand with real beans says limited, not identical. When citrus is scarce, a bar leans into apple and pear and tells you why. Trust shifts from sameness to honesty. That's a palate you can live with. Resolution and broader meaning. A handful of molecules, rooted through a handful of companies, quietly taught millions what natural tastes like. If this pulled back the curtain, share it with the friend who swears they can taste real. Subscribe for our next deep dive into banned additives that still haunt labels. Then try a side-by-side at home this week. One natural flavor, one real ingredient, and tell us which one your palate craves tomorrow. That tiny experiment is how you retrain taste and how this story goes